Shohei Ohtani, the unicorn who shattered the impossible. When the gods dared to play baseball. There are athletes who dominate a sport. There are legends who transcend generations. And then there is Shohei Ohtani, a man who looked at the laws of physics, the logic of the game, and the sacred traditions of baseball and simply said, "Not for me." He didn't just defy the impossible, he made it collapse. This is the story of how a quiet kid from a forgotten corner of Japan became the most unimaginable athlete ever to set foot on a baseball field. In the world of sports, they say you must choose. Be a specialist, master one craft. This ruthless rule is carved into the DNA of modern competition. But Ohtani chose to break that rule. He chose to dismantle the very concept of limitation. And in doing so, he shattered every record he touched. This isn't just a story about a baseball player. It's a saga of obsessive passion, of excruciating pain that nearly broke him, and of glory so absolute it lifted him into myth. A journey that began with an unimaginable dream and ended up rewriting the history books of the most American sport on earth. Prepare to meet the man who made the unimaginable feel inevitable. The man who, even in his darkest moments, never once doubted the promise he made to himself. If you're enjoying this journey so far, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. There's much more to come. The birth of a silent revolution. July 5, 1994, Oshu, Iwate Prefecture, Japan. Far from the spotlight of big cities, in a quiet land where tradition still ruled the rhythm of life, a child was born, destined to digitize the limits of human performance in baseball. While the world was celebrating the dawn of the digital age, Shohei Ohtani entered a family where excellence wasn't optional. It was genetic law. A quiet force was set in motion. His father, Toro, was once a promising semi-pro baseball player, a talent whose dreams had been crushed, perhaps by injuries or the burden of providing for a family. His mother, Kayuko, was a warrior of badminton, someone who knew the bitter taste of defeat and the sweet nectar of victory. They didn't impose baseball on Shohei. They lived it, and that passion took deep root in him. But Shohei wasn't just another Japanese boy raised under the shadow of ancestral discipline. There was something different about him, something almost otherworldly. At age 5, while other kids were playing video games, Shohei was studying the flight of a baseball like an obsessed scientist. It wasn't a game. It was analysis, obsession, a sacred study. He broke down every pitch, every swing, every motion with precision that bordered on the supernatural. It was as if he already knew baseball wasn't a game to be played. It was a language to be mastered. He didn't just play baseball, he spoke to it. His first coach would later recall, "The young Ohtani developed a ritual that would leave any modern sports psychologist in awe. He practiced pitching in front of a mirror for hours. He wasn't just training muscles, he was reprogramming his soul for perfection. Every fiber of his being was aligned with a single mission. And when people asked what he wanted to be when he grew up, his answer was always the same, delivered with the calm, eerie certainty of someone who had already seen his own future. I'm going to be the best pitcher and the best hitter in the world at the same time." For any other child, that would sound like a delusion. But for Shohei, it was a plan, a destiny. The Warriors. Wow. By the age of 15, Shohei Ohtani was no longer just a local prodigy. He was an anomaly. defying every known convention in the world of baseball. His fastball was already breaking 150 kilometers per hour, a velocity worthy of seasoned professionals. But it wasn't his arm that truly terrified opponents. It was his mind. While other teenagers dreamed of cars, video games, and the distractions of youth, Ohtani sat down and created a document, a handwritten, meticulous blueprint he called the Plan. In it, he mapped out exactly how he would become the first elite two-way player of the modern era. Nobody did that, not at the elite level. It was romantic, maybe, but impractical. Baseball today demands specialization, period. And yet, with the same unwavering clarity that would soon define his entire career, Ohtani made a declaration that changed everything. During an interview with local media, he stared straight into the camera, serene, composed, unshaken by the world's doubts, and said, "I'm not going to choose between pitching and hitting. I'm going to prove that choosing is a lie we tell ourselves." The journalist chuckled. His coach shook his head in disbelief, afraid that ambition that large could destroy him. Ohtani didn't blink. His conviction was his armor. By the time he was 18 years old, Ohtani was launching 161 km/h fastballs and crushing home runs over 120 meters. Scouts from Major League Baseball flooded in. Offers poured in from Los Angeles, New York, Boston, the biggest stages in the sport. The kid who once whispered an impossible dream was now being handed the microphone on the world's loudest stage. But Ohtani wasn't done surprising them. With the same unkerning calm that always cloaked his greatness, he said, "Before I conquer the world, I must honor my home." Instead of chasing fame and fortune overseas, he made a decision that would alter the course of modern baseball. He stayed in Japan, not out of fear, but out of strategy, out of loyalty, out of wisdom beyond his years. He knew he needed to forge himself in fire before stepping into the arena of giants. Liking this chapter? Drop a comment below. Did you know about this side of Ohtani's journey? The making of the unicorn. Hokkaido Nippon Ham Fighters 2013. While others rushed to cash in on American dollars and Major League glamour, Shohei Ohtani chose pain. He chose transformation. He stayed in Japan, not for comfort, but for the fire. Because to become a unicorn, he knew he had to be forged in one. What he did over the next 5 years wasn't just revolutionary, it was evolutionary. He didn't simply play as a pitcher and a hitter. He redefined what it meant to be complete in baseball. Not two separate skills, but one united force. His numbers were unreal. As a pitcher, he hit a top speed of 165 km/h, the fastest pitch ever recorded by a Japanese player. As a hitter, his home runs defied physics, reaching places no ball had ever landed before. But the numbers only told half the story. His genius was in the details. He studied each opponent like a puzzle to be solved. How he adjusted his mechanics mid-inning with surgeon-like precision. How he remained calm as a mountain with an entire nation watching. He wasn't competing against the other team. He was competing against the very idea that what he was doing was impossible, and he was winning. The world began to realize it wasn't just watching an extraordinary athlete, it was witnessing a new stage of human potential in motion. In 2016, he led his team to the Japan Series title. And in a feat that left analysts speechless, he was named MVP as both a pitcher and a hitter. Experts had long said that was statistically impossible. And yet, when reporters asked how it felt to break those barriers, Ohtani gave only a calm smile and said, "That was just the warm-up." It wasn't arrogance. It was prophecy. That year, baseball had no idea what was coming. The forge was complete, and the unicorn was ready to fly.
The arrival of the unimaginable.
December 2017. Los Angeles International Airport had never seen anything like it. Not a movie star, not a rock legend, but the man who promised to break the game of baseball itself was stepping onto American soil. Hundreds of reporters, Japanese and American, pushed in for a glimpse. The air crackled with tension and possibility. At just 23, Shohei Ohtani had chosen the Los Angeles Angels, not for the biggest contract. He left millions on the table, but for one condition: that he could be exactly who he always dreamed of being, a complete player. Not money, legacy. But the American press, they were brutal, skeptical, almost hostile. Another overhyped import who'll fall apart the first time he sees a major league slider, wrote a veteran columnist. "This isn't Japan, kid. You won't last," mocked another. They painted a picture of failure, loud, confident, and absolute. But Shohei didn't flinch. He let his numbers speak. 39 home runs, 3.31 ERA in his debut season. Suddenly, no one was laughing anymore. It was like watching Superman discover he could fly. You didn't believe it, even as it happened. One day he'd throw 100 miles an hour. The next, he'd hit a 450-foot bomb. It wasn't real, except it was. Each game became an event. Each appearance a chance to witness history in real time. Ohtani wasn't just playing baseball. He was rewriting its physics with every pitch, every swing. In May 2018, he became the first player since Babe Ruth in 1919 to record 2 home runs and 2 wins as a pitcher in the same month. Ruth had done it in a different era, in a different game. Ohtani was dragging that mythic past into the present and doing it better. But as with all legends, the higher you fly, the more the storm waits to test your wings. When the gods bleed. 2019. The cheers were still echoing, the home runs were still flying, the camera still followed his every move. But inside his body, something was breaking. First, it was a lingering tightness in his elbow, then a sharp pain after each pitch. Then came the words no pitcher ever wants to hear. Torn UCL. You need Tommy John surgery. Just like that, the impossible man was broken. The unicorn bled. And suddenly, the same media that once glorified him turned. Quickly, cruelly. "Told you he couldn't do both," they said. "This was always a fantasy. He'll never be the same." But while the world rushed to bury the myth, Ohtani retreated into silence. Not to mourn, but to rebuild. He didn't cry. He didn't rant. He just asked for the timeline and started planning like a machine. Surgery came, then months of rehab. Lonely, brutal, repetitive. The cameras faded, the headlines moved on, and Shohei Ohtani, once a global phenomenon, became a ghost in the dugout. But what the world couldn't see was the storm brewing inside him. The kind of storm only the truly great carry in silence. The kind that says, "You thought I was a miracle before? Wait till you see what I become after the pain." He worked in darkness. He trained in silence. He studied every flaw in his mechanics, every weakness in his swing, every hesitation in his delivery. Most would have chosen to quit one path, pitching or hitting, choose comfort, safety, longevity. But Ohtani, he chose the fire. Again, he returned with one vow. If I'm coming back as all of me.
The resurrection of the unicorn.
2021. The world was healing from a pandemic. Baseball was searching for a spark. And then, the unicorn returned. But this time, he wasn't just back. He was transformed. Faster, stronger, sharper, and somehow more determined than ever before. In his first full season after surgery, Shohei Ohtani unleashed a campaign that shattered not just records, but expectations, logic, and belief itself. He hit 46 home runs, stole 26 bases, and posted a 3.18 ERA on the mound. He was top 10 in strikeouts per 9 innings and top 5 in slugging percentage. In the same season, at the highest level of competition in the world. I've covered baseball for 40 years. I've seen Ruth, Bonds, Jeter, Griffey. But what Ohtani did in 2021, there's no comparison. None. And then came the moment the world finally stood in awe. The 2021 MLB All-Star Game. Shohei Ohtani became the first player in history to be selected as an All-Star both as a pitcher and a hitter. Not in separate seasons, in the same one. He started the game on the mound, and when his turn came at the plate, he stepped into the batter's box like it was the most natural thing in the world. The crowd didn't know whether to cheer or bow. He's doing things you only see in video games, and somehow he's real. By the end of the season, he wasn't just the MVP. He was the redefinition of what was possible in professional sports. But through it all, through the awards, the magazine covers, and the global endorsement deals, Shohei Ohtani remained quiet, humble, focused. Because for him, this wasn't about headlines. This was about honor. This was about keeping the promise he made to himself as a quiet boy staring into the mirror, pitching to his reflection.
The deal that shattered reality.
December 2023. The baseball world had been holding its breath. Whispers, speculation, and rumors surrounded the biggest free agent the sport had ever seen. And then, the news dropped. $700 million. 10 years. Shohei Ohtani to the Los Angeles Dodgers. It wasn't just the largest contract in the history of baseball. It was the largest contract in the history of sports. Not LeBron, not Messi, not Ronaldo. Ohtani. We're not just talking money here. We're talking about cultural gravity. Ohtani didn't just raise the bar. He erased it and built a new one in space. But here's the part that made jaws drop even further. Ohtani deferred nearly all of the money. He wouldn't touch most of it until long after the contract ended. Why? So the team could stay competitive, so they could sign more players, so he could win. Legacy over luxury, team over ego, honor over instant reward. It wasn't a contract, it was a manifesto. We offered him everything, and he gave us more than we expected. He's not just an athlete, he's a movement. This wasn't just about baseball anymore. Shohei Ohtani had become a global symbol of discipline, humility, and unrelenting ambition. Nike didn't create this brand. No marketing campaign manufactured this myth. It was born from one thing only: truth. In a world desperate for authenticity, Ohtani stood alone. No scandals, no drama, just performance, silence, and greatness. And as he suited up in Dodger blue for the first time, he wasn't smiling for the cameras. He was staring at the field, as if it owed him nothing. But he was about to take everything.
The eternal legacy. Shohei Ohtani isn't done. He's not retiring. He's not slowing down. His story is still being written in real time, under the lights, before millions. But even if it ended today, his legacy would already echo across history. Because what he did wasn't just statistical. It wasn't about MVPs, contracts, or magazine covers. It was about reclaiming the impossible. About standing in front of an entire world that said you can't, and answering simply, "Watch me." He reminded us that limits are often lies we agree to believe, that excellence doesn't have to choose, that greatness can be multilingual, in spirit, in skill, in vision. He's not just ours anymore. He belongs to the world now. And still, somehow, he carries all of us with him. When Shohei steps onto the field, he carries the pride of two nations, the hopes of an entire generation of kids told to specialize, to simplify, to settle, and the belief that you can be everything they say you can't. He is the living contradiction, the myth made man, the flame that refuses to burn out. And when the time comes, decades from now, when statues are built in his honor, they won't just depict a batter or a pitcher. They'll show a man, calm, focused, whole, holding both ball and bat, looking straight ahead, as if saying, "This is who I've always been. You just had to believe." This is the story of Shohei Ohtani, the unicorn who chose to exist. The storm that never shouted, but changed the game forever. If this story moved you, if it made you dream again, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to remember that the impossible is just an opinion. This is the Champion's DNA, and we'll see you next time, where legends are born not by chance, but by choice.